Every town has its fixtures. In Millage, it wasn't a statue or flagpole. It was Hal Mercer's regular seat in the diner corner. The bell over the door at Maple and Pine chimed softly as Hal entered, his frame slightly bent, his steps measured, but steady. The air hung sweet with maple syrup and warm eggs, steam rising from the kitchen accompanied by the sizzle of the griddle. He didn't need to look around. The window booth was always open at 6:42 a.m. Darlene spotted him before he spoke. "Mornin', darlin'," she said, already reaching for the black coffee carafe. Hal nodded briefly, a whisper of a smile crossing his face as he slid into the booth. He placed his leather-bound notebook by the salt shaker and folded his coat just so to fit on the hook. The jacket, faded, frayed, looked like stories were sewn into every seam. He unfolded the Millage Weekly Tribune, gave it one shake and spread it across the table like ritual. Nobody asked where Hal came from. They just knew he arrived every morning. Same jacket, same silence. His presence kept rhythm like the jukebox that returned to Sinatra at the same time every Monday. He always ordered buttermilk pancakes, no butter, 2 crisp bacon strips, and always left a folded $3 bill under the saucer before his plate arrived. At 6:47 a.m., Brandon Hale blew in with a gust of cold air and the clatter of an overstuffed binder. The doorbell jangled louder, less welcoming. "Big week ahead, folks," he announced, brushing past 2 retirees picking at their omelets. Darlene gave him a half-smile without breaking stride as she poured Mr. Kessler's coffee. Brandon beelined for the counter, dropping his binder with a thud. "Triple espresso today, Darlene. You wouldn't believe the Veterans Day planning chaos." She raised an eyebrow. "How chaotic we talking, honey?" Brandon laughed, scanning the room. His eyes landed on Hal. "Still holding court, I see," he said, just loud enough to carry. "Must be nice having a permanent reservation." Darlene didn't respond immediately. She delivered Hal's breakfast with deliberate care. "This man pulled my Norman from Miller Street when a car jumped the curb. Broke his wrist yanking him clear. Never said a word about it, just paid his bill and went home." Brandon's laugh died mid-chuckle. "Didn't know that." "There's plenty you don't know, baby," Darlene said, turning back to the counter. Brandon slithered to Hal's booth, arms crossed, binder pressed to his chest. Hal didn't look up from his paper. Brandon leaned in, eyes narrowing at the jacket. "That thing belongs in a donation bin," he remarked, pointing to a barely visible bluish triangle beneath. "The collar. Seen too many winners." Hal quietly turned a page. His silver watch ticked softly beneath Sinatra's voice. Brandon laughed again, the edge unmasked now. "Hope it holds together through the parade." Darlene, at the coffee machine, froze. Her gaze lifted, not to Brandon, but to Hal. The newspaper in his hands went still, though he said nothing. The silence weighed heavier than the insult. Brandon shifted his weight, suddenly uncertain. He tapped the table twice. "Big week. I'll leave you to your rituals." Turning, he caught his hip on the counter. The doorbell's usual chime sounded, softer as it closed behind him. Morning sun broke through the diner's streaked windows, warming the laminate and glinting off brass napkin holders as Darlene slid into Hal's booth. The light hit his jacket at just the right angle to draw attention. Hal never missed a Monday in Mosswood Park, and the benches never needed to ask who kept them clean. At 6:03 a.m., fog still clung thick between the trees, pooling around bronze statues and gravel paths. The park stood silent except for the scrape of Hal Mercer's hand brushing dead leaves from bench number 7's slats, one of the last wooden ones not replaced by plastic. His linen sack held folded cloths, a dented thermos, and a small American flag still, stiff from its packaging. Moving slowly, knees protesting, he knelt before Lieutenant Thomas Callahan's weathered plaque. With a clean handkerchief, he wiped the bronze clean, polished the name, and carefully straightened the flower vase. A weekend wind had toppled one carnation. Hal replaced it with quiet care, aligning the flag so it stood straight and centered. Gravel crunched behind him. "Sir, this area is closed until the city crew finishes setup." Brandon Hale's voice cut through the fog, clipboard clutched like a shield. Hal turned his head slowly, rising with the deliberate patience of a man who'd survived louder orders. He said nothing. Instead, he nodded lightly and pointed at the vase. Brandon came closer and surveyed the area. We marked the zones for the veteran program. Chairs, stage, loudspeakers. The law department says no volunteer helpers without a license until the layout's approved. Arrest if they have to. Hale didn't answer. He grabbed his carry bag and pulled out a small wooden sign, its surface hand-painted with careful angular letters. Remember them, yes? He placed it gently in the soft earth beside the sidewalk. Brandon blinked. Did you make that? A woman's voice rang out from behind the hedges. He does one every year. Tina Alvarez emerged between the trees wrapped in an olive-green field jacket 2 sizes too big. Work gloves peeked from her carry bag. And I leave it right where he puts it. Every time. Brandon hesitated. It's just not standardized. Tina bowed her head. He was here before her approval letter was even printed. Brandon flushed. The clipboard nervously changed hands. Still, if it's not city-sanctioned, she walked past him, picking up a loose trash bag near the container. Then they'll just throw it out. When Brandon turned back to Hale, the older man had already moved on, kneeling now before another plaque. This one read, Feldwebel Diane M. Luring 1960-1989 gently. He brushed pine needles from the engraved letters. As he bent, his jacket stretched, revealing the receiver again, triangular, bulging, its seams nearly smooth. On a nearby bench, Mr. Ogden raised a trembling hand in greeting. Wrapped in 2 shawls with a paper cup of coffee, he watched Hale with the quiet awe of a morning ritual. He's done this since my eldest was born, Tina murmured. Never asked for thanks. Brandon crossed his arms. Still wearing that jacket, huh? His voice lifted slightly to Carrie. Tina closed her eyes but stayed silent. It's just an old jacket, Brandon added with a half-laugh, scribbling on his clipboard. Hale kept wiping, his back to them. Then he turned slightly, eyed the frayed edge of the receiver, and tugged his collar up in one slow motion. He stood, nodded to Mr. Ogden, and walked wordlessly toward the park's edge. Brandon bent to pick up the handmade sign, staring at its uneven letters before shaking his head. Tina stepped closer. You really don't get it, do you? Brandon shrugged. Get what? Folding chairs creaked. The brass ensemble played softly as the crowd rose, except for one man, the one the general was approaching. A breeze cut like a blade through Mosswood Park, fluttering the paper fans students had placed along the path. The choir stood in navy blue striped jackets. The scent of fallen leaves mixed with polished metal and old wood. The honor guard stood rigid, rifles upright, shoes aligned like compass needles. It was Thursday, November 9th, and Millridge observed Veterans Day the only way it knew how. Small, earnest, and slightly uncoordinated, Brandon Hale gripped the podium. One hand clutched the mic stand, the other fluttered through his notepad. His beige sport coat was too thin for the cold and too new to be reliable. He'd already faltered once, calling, Lieutenant Jubinski, Lieutenant Dispinsky. Now resetting, he announced, Please welcome our guest of honor, retired General Ella Torrens, decorated veteran of the 101st Airborne, recipient of the Silver Star, Bronze Star, and Legion of Merit. Polite applause rose from veterans, spouses, teachers, and a handful of hoodie-clad teens. The general stepped onto the path, flanked by 2 ROTC cadets. Her coat bore heavy insignia. Her silver hair was braided tight. Her eyes swept the crowd like she was gauging wind before a jump. She mounted the stage, nodded to Brandon, then froze. Her gaze locked onto the right bench near the oak. Hal Mercer sat there, hands on a cane he hadn't used yesterday. His jacket was half-buttoned, just enough to show the triangular badge beneath. His cap was pulled low, not from disrespect, but something quieter, older. The general didn't speak. She stepped off the stage. The crowd stilled. The band trailed off. She crossed the grass, boots silent. The only sounds were the wind plucking the mic cable and the flag snapping once before going slack. Hal didn't move. Then General Torrens stopped. Before him straightened and raised a razor-sharp salute, a gesture that needed no stage to hold weight. A murmur tore through the crowd. A woman gripped her husband's arm. A teacher dropped her program. A child no older than 8 pointed. "That's Mr. Hal." Brandon's mouth opened, then shut. His notes fluttered to the ground. The general held the salute longer than protocol demanded. When she finally lowered her hand, her voice was quiet but carried. "This badge was given to 5 men. He's the last one left." Silence rippled outward. A boy whispered, "That's the guy from the diner." Hal didn't react. For a moment he seemed cast in bronze like the statues nearby. Then he nodded once, stood slowly, and returned the salute, just as a lone trumpet began to play. The corner booth at the diner stood empty for the first time in years, but the jacket remained, neatly folded beside a receipt stamped Hal Mercer. Brandon hesitated at the door of Maple and Pine. The bell jingled, but the diner felt hushed, as if the walls themselves were listening. Outside, the sky hung gray. The sidewalk glistened with morning drizzle. Inside, rain tapped the windows, but no one rushed to wipe it away. Brandon's eyes went straight to the corner booth. The seat was untouched, the napkin dispenser unmoved. But on the table, where pancakes usually sat, the jacket lay folded, badge visible now, not hidden in folds. Next to it, a receipt bore only a timestamp and cursive. Hal Mercer. Brandon approached like someone entering a shrine. He slid onto the opposite bench, eyes tracing the jacket's worn elbows and cuffs. Beneath its hem peeked a twice-folded napkin. He picked it up 5 words in faded ink. "Some ceremonies need no ceremony." He exhaled, leaning back as Darlene arrived with 2 mugs, one already half full. She set it before him. "Didn't think I'd see you here again," she said gently. Brandon didn't look up. "Did he say anything before he left this?" "Just asked. For your usual table." She slid into the chair across from him. "How long do you know?" "Not sure I did. Just enough to trust the silence." Brandon rubbed his forehead. "You once said he helped your son." Darlene's eyes softened. "Norman was 6 running across Miller Street. A car came out of nowhere. Hal yanked him back, broke his own wrist doing it. Wouldn't let me call an ambulance, just smiled and said it'll reset." Brandon's thumb traced the napkin's edge. "And you never told anyone?" "Wasn't my story to tell." The doorbell chimed. Tina entered, shaking rain from her navy work jacket. She eyed the corner booth, then joined them. "Figured I'd find you here," she said to Brandon. "Came to add my piece." He gestured to the jacket. "About this?" Tina nodded. 2 winners back? A storm took out Mosswood's power. I couldn't get a crew till Monday, but by dawn Saturday, every path shoveled, every headstone cleared. Darlene smiled. "Hal? Fixed the gate lanterns too. Paid out of pocket. Signed the invoice. A. Mercer. Night shift." Brandon stared at the badge. He was always here, every day. Never left. Tina stirred her coffee. Guess he didn't need a spotlight. The radio switched to a 1940s ballad, crackling, muted. The air in the diner thickened, warm and close. Brandon stood abruptly, clutching the jacket to his chest. "I need to find him." Millridge Library had no database, but it had Maggie. And that was better. The door squeaked as Brandon entered the stone building, its air thick with old paper and floor wax. Maggie sat behind the card catalog, a half-finished crossword and teacup, never a ring, before her. Her hair spiraled gray. The owl on her brooch looked ancient. "Took you long enough," she said without glancing up. Brandon blinked. "What? Man leaves a jacket and a mystery? Someone'll come looking." She tapped her pen. "Darlene called. Said you looked like you were reading Braille with mittens." He laughed, weakly. "I need everything on Hal Mercer. Articles, records, anything." Maggie's smile was pure librarian, 1 part sly, 2 parts satisfied. "I went to school with his sister.